Friends of the PIOB, it's probably just as well that we can't see into the future. In 2005, as I was settling into my new role as chair of the Executive Committee at IOSCO, and the PIOB was being formed, I could never have foreseen being here with you 15 years later, celebrating the PIOB's 15th birthday. Had I done so, my vision would probably have been evoked a lovely party, clinking glasses in the beautiful garden in Calle Oquendo, Madrid, amongst the roses on a warm autumnal evening. Not a talk fest of hundreds of screens zooming in from every corner of the world in every time zone imaginable. But how great it is that through the wonders of technology, we can be all here together virtually to join in this celebration, something unthinkable 15 years ago. We live in interesting times. As COVID-19 tragically causes millions of lives to be lost, economies to be upended, the expectations of governments, corporates, professionals and individuals are being transformed. The fourth industrial revolution gathers pace and climate change effects are being sheeted home. Reporting is being transformed as stakeholders call for new global non-financial standards. And the PIOB itself and public interest oversight are also being reformed. And it's against this tumultuous background that we celebrate. So let's virtually clink our glasses together to celebrate 15 years of public interest oversight, celebrating especially the excellent leadership of our past chairs, Stavros and Eddie, the dedication of our former and current members and staff, and look forward to further successes with Linda at the helm as the PIOB, its partners and stakeholders, successfully navigate the upcoming reform process and continue to play a vital role in trust in the global financial system. It's my great pleasure and honour to introduce the panel speakers at this event. Anna Martinez-Pina, Dr. Stavros Tomadakis, Tom Seidenstein, and Sagar Teohsha. After their presentations, we'll take some questions from the audience. Anna Martinez-Pina is a co-chair of the Monitoring Group. Regretfully, is not able to join our panel in person today. However, she did want to be present and has sent a message to all of us.
Thank you, Jane. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. Linda, PIOB board members, Gonzalo, thank you for your kind invitation to attend this special event that celebrates the PIOB's 15th anniversary. It's a pity that I have not been able to make it due to my agenda, but somehow I wanted to be present today. I have followed the work carried out by the PIOB from the different positions I have held during my professional career, and throughout these years I have seen how the PIOB has always worked to support the public interest of the audit profession. I think last July, with the approval of the recommendations, we took a huge step towards strengthening the international audit and ethics standard setting system. It has been a long journey, and I would like to thank the PIOB and of course Eddie, who has been there from the very beginning, for all your contributions and efforts, especially since Sagar and I became co-chairs of the monitoring group. Your interaction and your dialogue with IFAC, as well as your valuable input, have been fundamental for the approval of the recommendations. We all have a big challenge ahead in order to go through the transition phase and implement the recommendations. Fortunately, all of us, IFAC, IAASB, and IESBA, the PIOB, the monitoring group, and the audit profession have a common objective, and that is to guarantee the public interest of the audit profession. So I hope we continue working together as we have done for the last year. You have a great panel today with Tom, Stavros, and Sagar, so I'm sure it will be of enormous interest. Congratulations and long live the PIOB. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna Maria. Our second speaker is Stavros Tomadakis. Dr. Stavros Tomadakis is the chair of IESBA, the Ethics Board. He is the Emeritus Professor of Financial Economics at the University of Athens, and his research focuses on market regulation, standard setting, and governance. Formerly, he was chairman of the Hellenic Capital Markets. He chaired the IOSCO Regional Committee and was the inaugural chair of the Public Interest Oversight Board, serving from 2005 to 2011. Stavros. Stavros, I think you might be on mute. We can't hear you. Sorry.
We seem to have lost him.
Yes, I'm just going to try and send him a quick note. Stavros, can you hear us? I think they're trying to reconnect Stavros, so if we just pause for a moment, hopefully he can be connected again. Tom, perhaps we might ask you to start your discussion. Just allow me to introduce you. And Stavros, are you able to hear us now? Excuse me.
I am back on. Yes, I was cut off for some
reason.
Excuse me, Tom.
I
apologize.
If you don't mind, we'll allow Stavros to continue. I'm sorry, Stavros, we just couldn't hear you for a moment.
I was saying that this is a very moving for me, of course, and I want to join in congratulating the PIOB for its 15th anniversary and my best wishes for the next 15. PIOB have fulfilled successfully a demanding mandate to build and operate an oversight framework to ensure that standards for audit and for ethics embody clear public interest objectives and respond to the needs of global users while maintaining, of course, clarity and quality. The content and influence of the standards have extended considerably over this year period. The PIOB deserves a good share of credit for this achievement. It has followed proactively the planning and execution of standard setting, the due process, the sharpening of public interest language and objectives. It has been alert and communicative, but has remained at arm's length from the technical work of standard setting. Looking at the whole system since 2005, I would certainly count the performance as an overall success, a success premised on a collaborative stance of the PIOB and the standard setting boards, respective roles. A success we should now, of course, build on as we move on to this great new phase with the recommendations for reform the monitoring group has issued. We'll be hearing more about that later. This seminar is, of course, a unique opportunity to discuss ideas and directions for the future. The deeper challenge underlying the PIOBs and the motions has been to keep abreast of a dynamic public interest, a set of concepts and values varying across space and changing over time. This dynamic has taught both the standard setting boards and the PIOB open to new needs and perceptions. Corporate failures, financial turbulence, technological disruptions, looming crises such as climate change, and of course the present pandemic with the COVID, have spearheaded new and broader perceptions of the public interest. Some other speakers have already pointed out. The ESG agenda defines clear objectives underpinning the global public interest. This is a program that does and should inform our notions of public interest. It is all the more critical as we observe around us new forms of economic nationalism. These developments create repercussions for global standards, which we need to reflect and strategize on, both standard setters and overseers. My thinking, taking into account especially technological disruptions, is that all of us work to ensure broader adoption and more comprehensive use of the standards. And here I refer back to something that I heard my friend Eddie Wimmer say about variation across the globe on standard adoption. Now, for that to happen, standards must be applicable. Applicability is, to my mind, an overarching desideratum. Standards must respond to emerging objectives, but must also push for tangible improvement in practical outcomes. It is important to be able to see tangible effects of the standards in real time. In my conversations with many stakeholders around the world, I've realized how pressing, how precious this is. Here are some ways of focusing on applicability beyond what we're doing. First of all, a closer link of boards with national standard setters. I think this is something that's being thought about in the context of monitoring recommendations. Systematic adoption of post-implementation reviews for impactful standards, especially. Coordinated initiatives, and I mean standard setting boards, IFAC, and the PE, for awareness raising, facilitation of adoption, and clarity in implementation. Widening use of surveys of users and beneficiaries, like target groups of the standards as a global public good. These are some thoughts that I thought I should share at this point. Let me close, since I have limited, sharing some thoughts on coordination between the two standard setting boards. From occasional collaboration, we have moved over the last 4 years to systematic coordination of work, the IAASB and the IESBA. Collaboration at the level of leadership, task forces, staff, and joint meetings of the two boards, already initiated with Arnold Schilder at the helm of the IAASB, is now very actively pursued by my colleague Tom, who is right there at the table. In substantive terms, we are moving from seeking consistency to build synergy of the standards. Not only are our respective standards not conflicting, they're becoming mutually reinforcing, and that is constant ambition. This is progress, and I think it creates strong incentive for users just to adopt standards, but to adopt both sets of standards at the same time. And this has, of course, implications for future practice, especially on how strategies of standard setting are crafted, and of course, on how it is also practiced. In sum, we have to reflect on achieving public interest contributions, not of independent parts as if they were unrelated, I mean the two standard setting boards, but of autonomous parts that are consciously and continuously coordinated. So with that thought, I will close. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Very interesting indeed. Now I'll ask Tom Seidenstein, the chair of the IAASB, who prior to taking up his IAASB role, he held senior roles at Fannie Mae and in the IFRS Foundation. He also served as a trustee of the International Valuations Council and on XBRL's International Board of Advisors. Tom.
Thank you, Jane. And first of all, I'd like to wish the PIOB a happy 15th anniversary and thank the many people who have volunteered time to the PIOB for their service. You have created an important institution, one whose relevance to the external reporting architecture should continue to grow. I joined the IAASB last year as a non-auditor with a firm conviction that the public interest is best served when market participants have confidence in reported information and those that provide assurance. At its best, the audit profession is at the heart of driving market confidence. However, as others have mentioned, despite the good work of many auditors, recent corporate failures do raise questions regarding the relevance and quality of audits. Together, regulators, oversight bodies such as the PIOB, independent standard setters, and practitioners can all be constructive forces in addressing those questions. In my remarks today, I want to do three things. First, emphasize the value of independent, publicly accountable standard setting, and therefore the PIOB's role. Second, describe the IAASB's efforts to be more responsive, agile, and connected to our key partners, including IESBA. And third, highlight a recent accomplishment that should form a better foundation to support audit quality. Let me turn to the importance of independent standard setting. I strongly believe that setting standards at the international level is the most effective way to respond to the relentless globalization of business and avoid the economic costs and regulatory arbitrage that come with a fragmentation of rules. At the same time, international standards are best set by an independent standard setting body with appropriate expertise and perspective, free of undue influences, and committed to a thorough due process. A word of warning: independence is not omnipotence. With the privilege of independence, our system requires appropriate accountability mechanisms and standard setters who are constantly willing to prove that the public interest comes first. To that light, I commend the Monitoring Group for recently completing its reform recommendations. The reforms end a period of uncertainty and should produce positive change by bolstering the independence of the standard setting boards. The changes should also improve public accountability. I particularly highlight the PIOB's critical oversight role, now clearly articulated through a public interest framework. I am also pleased that the recommendations preserve the two-board structure, IESBA and the IAASB, and the technical competence of the standard setters. The standard setting boards look forward to working closely with the Monitoring Group, the PIOB, IFAC, and other key stakeholders to implement those changes without delay. While the Monitoring Group was deliberating the proposed reform, we at the IAASB took the position that our best contribution to the public interest was to take the proverbial bull by its horns. We instituted a new strategy after PIOB review aimed at putting the public interest front and center of all that we do. After completing foundational standards, we are now in the process of pivoting our work plan to focus on the most pressing emerging challenges facing audit and assurance. This shift includes dedicated efforts to reduce the growing complexity of our standards. And we've now added work streams on fraud, going concern, assurance of non-financial information, and standards that address the impact of technology. When I speak around the world, those topics are raised in nearly every conversation that I've had. This was mentioned earlier, and it's something I feel really strongly about. A common complaint of standard setters is that we move too slowly. While respecting due process, our strategy calls for us to make the standard setting process more agile. For example, we heard that our standards have stood up well during the COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, we recognized that practitioners and other stakeholders needed help. We responded quickly with a series of staff alerts aimed at applying our standards under the current environment and coordinated closely with national standard setters and IFAC to disseminate our work. Our strategy at the IAASB seeks tighter coordination with the broader ecosystem, including securities regulators, inspection regimes, and other standard setters. Our reporting system will only work better when the different parts of the system work together. Indeed, that level of consultation has only intensified over recent months and has allowed us to identify the public interest issues better on key topics. As Stavros mentioned, and maybe the most intense coordination has occurred with our partners at IESBA. And this really was a path forged by my predecessor, Arnold Schilder and Stavros. Indeed, the completion of our recent quality management standards benefited from alignment on many topics, including the key public interest issue of a mandatory cooling off periods. Both boards are really aligned on that topic, and can honestly say that our two boards are working together in all aspects of our work these days. Now, there's lots of reasons to be pessimistic in this world, but I figured I'd conclude by a reason for optimism. And a reason for optimism that our collective efforts will generate trust in audit engagements. Just last week, we approved a new revised suite of quality management standards. In doing so, we addressed all of the PIOB's public interest issues and now await their approval. The resulting suite of these quality management standards is aimed at a more robust system for firms using the IAASB standards and is a significant evolution from a traditional, more linear approach to quality control. What I think is maybe most significant about these new standards is that they greatly enhance the expectations and accountability of firm leadership for quality management and focus on an appropriate culture committed to the consistent performance of quality engagements. The new standards reinforce firms' leadership responsibilities for ensuring that the system operates efficiently and effectively. The standards require more rigorous monitoring of the system of quality management, understanding the root causes of deficiencies and swift remediation of those deficiencies. It is our view that a culture that facilitates proactive and regular self-scrutiny will help engagement teams feel supported in our total collective goal for quality engagement and should enable continual improvements in quality in audit. The PIOB has come a long way in 15 years. From my life at the IFRS Foundation and now at the IAASB, I recognize how challenging and crucial oversight is. It is an essential ingredient to an independent standard setting process. I look forward to participating and working closely with the PIOB as it takes on its next 15. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is the other co-chair of the monitoring group, Sagar Teohsha, and he has served as the US SEC's chief accountant since July 2019 as principal advisor to the SEC on accounting and auditing matters. In this role is responsible for the oversight of the Financial Accounting Standards Board and the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. Prior to joining the SEC, he was a partner at Deloitte in the national office. Sagar.
Thank you, Jane. First off, I'd certainly echo Anna's comments. Glad, obviously, we work very closely together. Glad she could pass along those comments. So certainly echo those. I'll talk about a couple different things today. First, most importantly, is truly a day of celebration. The 15th anniversary is a very important day. Certainly have enjoyed working with the PIOB in the role as co-chair of the MG, and we're regularly actively engaged, whether it's us or our teams on different matters with the PIOB, and look forward to that dialogue. So, but also a big thanks to all who've been part of the PIOB, Stavros, Eddie, thank you for your service, and then certainly for the other members and folks, wanted to thank them. So what I'll talk about maybe was kind of a little bit of the backdrop on the history of the recommendations that so many folks have spoken about, and maybe just highlight a few of the most critical recommendations, although there's a whole host of them, and they're all important to kind of achieve this commonality we speak about in terms of public interest and the importance of that. So as folks know, for the last 5 years, there's been a number of discussions in terms of trying to move forward the recommendations. There was a public consultation back in 2017, a whole host of different feedback comments, came through there. We have had, as part of the MG, countless discussions, whether it's with PIOB, IFAC, standard setting boards, whether it's Stavros, whether it's Tom, their organizations. And then obviously internally, the monitoring group comprises of a number of large global organizations. IFR, Financial Standards Board, IOSCO, which is where Anna and I represent, World Bank, just to name a few of the organizations, European Commission. And so getting everybody's different perspectives, discussions, obviously, is part of the, I think, part of what makes the monitoring group so intriguing. And you're able to get kind of the different points of view and thought processes. And so, and all of this was grounded kind of in the view of the public interest and how we can best support that through, the different 3-tier process. And certainly, as Tom mentioned, we thought about 2 boards versus 1 board. Feel really good about where we came out about that. Thought a lot about what the PIOB's role should be, what the standard setting board's roles should be, kind of this balance, Stavros, you mentioned about technical balanced with the appropriate rigorous oversight, where the monitoring group fits in, how you kind of think about board members and composition, et cetera. So it was a wealth of different considerations and so forth. And I'm certainly delighted that back in the summer, we were able to get that through. I think one thing that shows the importance of this work is it's kind of incredible that given COVID happened, that none of this work even hesitated. There wasn't, when we were organizing calls, whether it was internal or external, nobody even mentioned it. And obviously I could speak to my organization. Certainly there was a lot of things going on. Things were very busy, no doubt at your organizations too. But the fact that this kept going, and in fact, that the recommendations were done kind of, in the middle of it, shows, I think, the importance of it, the need to get it done, and so forth. And so truly an effort by all parties in the system, which makes sense given that it impacts everybody in the system. And so we certainly felt good about those recommendations. Maybe I'll just highlight a few of those, some of which I've touched on, and then it sounds like there'll be some questions, and obviously more than happy to, with Tom and Stavros, to answer any questions. But certainly one thing that was important to us is the independence of standard setting boards, changing kind of the structure from how it exists now to where it goes. Another area that was critical was kind of the composition of the standard setting boards, of trying to balance a multidisciplinary approach, different perspectives, different viewpoints, also balancing the need for technical. Obviously, there's different models throughout the world and how people do that. I think we feel very good about the balance that we got to. Certainly, do people have different views? Of course, but I think we landed at a place that we feel most comfortable with. And then kind of one critical piece of this is the PIOB and the oversight responsibilities, the importance of those responsibilities in terms of certifications, grounding it in the PIF. And so obviously a lot of work was done in terms of what the PIOB kind of will do in their responsibilities. And then of course, discussions about nomination processes kind of are important through all of the different organizations that we work through. And then I think finally, one of the things we were trying to get at was just having clear responsibilities. I think that when everybody has the responsibility, MG, PIOB, standard setting boards, when everybody kind of knows where their lanes are, where they need to kind of interact back and forth, I think that can lead to the most productive and most impactful organizations. And so, and then that's just touching on a fraction of what's that. So certainly would encourage anybody to read the recommendations if they haven't. But certainly we feel like there's been a lot of progress. As Anna pointed out, we're optimistic here about the future and the implementation of the recommendations, which is a key effort that we're spending a lot of time on now, and we'll continue to spend a lot of time on with the applicable groups. It's one thing to get the recommendations, but actually do the transition in a timely, effective manner is a really important piece of this too, and that's not lost on us. And so certainly our full energies as MG we're putting into that, and we're gonna try to make sure we get the the right folks involved in the right work streams on this matter. So, so much going on in there, but that's my quick summary of what's happening. But again, certainly want this day to pivot back to the celebration and the thanks for what the PIOB has done over the last 15 years.
Thank you very much, Sagar. We now have about 15 minutes for questions, and I believe that Kevin Dancy, the CEO of IFAC, might have a question he'd like to ask members of the panel. Kevin, are you there?
Hello to all on the panel. I'm Kevin Dancy, CEO of IFAC. My question to the members of the panel. Everyone agrees that 1, the standard setting process needs to be independent of the profession. 2, the standards need to be set in the public interest. And 3, the standards need to be of high quality. To achieve these, our position at IFAC is that the profession needs to be engaged, as these are very technical standards, but with the right checks and balances and public interest oversight. What in your minds, as standard setting board chairs, as monitoring group chairs, are the 1 or 2 critical factors to getting this balance right? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that? Tom, have you got a view?
Thanks, Jane. And excellent question, Kevin. So I would say there are 2 things in my mind: is to get the right people on our boards, and that means the right combination of technical expertise and perspective of the different users of externally reported information. And that, to me, is really important. And a thing that the monitoring group preserved is the technical expertise of the boards, because at the end of the day, the tech standard setting is a technical game. And so we needed to maintain the technical competence of the boards. Secondly, I would say is that we run a thorough due process, and one that gets the input of stakeholders throughout the world in as rapidly as possible, and particularly find ways to engage people that are not naturally inclined to participate in the standard setting process. We well know that practitioners are the most interested and capable of participating, but we at the standard setting boards now are trying to be more innovative on tapping other users of this externally reported information as much as possible. That is, as Stavros mentioned, the use of surveys, more roundtables. We had one yesterday where we just brought in a range of users as well as practitioners. So I think it's technical expertise with the appropriate complement of perspectives on the board, and secondly, a due process that's tapping viewpoints throughout the world.
Stavros, do you have anything you'd like to say on this matter?
Well, just add a couple of words. Agree with what Tom was saying. Just say that on the other side, we do have need of technical expertise, especially with respect to what I was saying before about the applicability of standards, to make sure that the standards we make are capable of application and capable of being introduced into national jurisdictions. To me, it's very important that we have balance, yes, but also that we have a collegial climate within the workings of the board, which makes a lot of difference, a lot of difference about how to marry the technical expertise with the other perspectives. And this is, of course, something that has to do with the way the chairs work and with the way the PIOB also oversees and intervenes.
Thank you. Sagar, do you want to add anything to this discussion?
Yeah, no, I agree with the points made. I think for me, and we see this in all different organizations that we see, it comes down to the people, right? I mean, we've set up, I think, a structure we feel good about. But now through the nomination process, through identifying the different skills necessary, if you get the right balance of the people, it's going to be terrific. And a lot of that comes down to, how do people from the outside feel that the boards are doing, the PIOB is doing, the monitoring group is doing? Do they want to put their energies into applying, coming to join the boards? And obviously when things go well or going well, it gets easy, right? It kind of becomes a little bit self-fulfilling. In other cases, you have to do a shift, right? And we've seen this kind of throughout, right? So you could set up a board, say, okay, it's going to have 5 people and 3 are going to be this way and 2 are going to be that way. It could be a great board or it could be a terrible board. It just depends on kind of the composition of the 5 and the quality of those 5 and so forth. And obviously our numbers are different. So the 5 I was just using as an example. But so to me, it comes down to the people. You get the right people in these different pieces of the ecosystem, the structure can work really, really well, right? There's proven examples around the world. If you have challenges with those people, there's no replacing them, right? I mean, if some people aren't operating, then it's going to be challenging, right? And no doubt Stavros and Tom can live that, and that's part of what goes on. So to me, that's why there's so much energy on that. That's why there'll be so much energy on making sure we've got the processes set for transition. And then I think just taking a step back, just the shared work we're doing, everything everybody said today, right? Is there a vibrancy? Is there a reason why people would want to come join of the highest quality people that we're looking to get in whatever part of the ecosystem is? And then the last thing is obviously the engagement piece, right? The more people that can be engaged with, the more external engagement there is. I think the better, the more the boards are ready and active for whatever the issues are. So that'd just be my 2 cents on top of what was already said.
Thanks. Sounds like the nominations process is going to be pretty important going forward too. I think Sir Brian Nicholson had a question for the panel. Sir Brian, are you there?
Thank you, Jane. My name is Brian Nicholson, and I am a former PIOB member. It is a real pleasure to participate in this 15th anniversary celebration. Each of you on the panel have had distinguished careers in the regulatory arena. What have been the most significant influences on your thinking in relation to your work with the PIOB?
Stavros, would you like to start?
Yes, I would, and especially because as I have explained, and I apologize to the audience, I have to leave in a few minutes. I have a board meeting. Very happy to see Sir Brian and to answer his question. The most influences, he says, well, the most important influences to me from the PIOB experience have been the links with the stakeholders, with the different communities that I discovered as I was heading the PIOB, and the different needs and perspectives. And to me, it was a very enriching experience to see how we could carve out a space for oversight in the public interest, because I saw people approaching the public in different ways. And that meant that the work was very hard to do. But this variety that led eventually to a synthesis was, to me, a great lesson.
Tom?
Well, it's great to see Brian's face, and I may just answer. Working with Brian was the way I learned the most about the value of independent standard setting, because he was the one who ingrained this concept of independence with public accountability in my head. And it could have been the answer to my last question, or the third point that I would raise is like a humility that must come with being an independent standard setter. It's not a right to be an independent standard setter. It's a privilege. And I think we have to ask ourselves how we constantly earn the privilege of our independence. And this means putting the public interest first at all times. The other thing I would say is that I was on the sidelines for the first 11 years of the IAASB's existence, which I think was a real success in terms of IFRS adoption of the world. But it wasn't without its hiccups along the way. And so constantly building a structure that's responsive, is accountable, that is humble, it seems to be the lessons I took from those experiences. And hopefully people will see that applied to the IAASB today.
Sagar, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. I mean, I think, look, independence, as has been mentioned, does not mean isolation, does not mean exclusion, right? It means that, you know, we have different parts of our roles that are critical. We have to be engaged, and then we have to follow what we believe is, you know, is the mandate of public interest, whatever scenario you're in. Where I think we've seen kind of the most success is where you have honest, direct dialogue on a regular basis. You're critically thinking, you're looking out forward 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. If you're looking at today, it's not gonna go well. You have to kind of be a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of that. And so, you know, I think we'll try to continue what we've done with the PIOB, which is, you know, you know, I think Anna would agree with this, and the other MG members, right? It's just our honest, you know, two-way dialogue that we have in terms of discussions, kind of sharing what's on our mind, wanting to hear what's on other folks' mind, and then remembering kind of the kind of full system and what we're all doing here. And, you know, we'll continue to work on that. And frankly, I think the nice thing is we've worked together now, I think, you know, at least since we became the co-chairs now for maybe not quite a year and a half, but a little bit over somewhere in that direction. And so I think we have a cadence here of how we're working together. And, you know, when it came to transition, a bunch of people came and said, well, what's going to happen now? Is it going to be all different? And to me, it was like, well, why would it be different? I mean, it's a different work stream, but why would it be different, right? We've tried to exhibit these principles that we're talking about in the work to get the recommendations done. And so, you know, that question kind of threw me off because I had thought that there would be sufficient kind of understanding, but, you know, look, it's still new and so forth. And so you know, we'll continue to move that down the path.
Thank you. Well, just perhaps I can just ask a question of you both to draw from some of the questions. We don't have time to run through all of the questions. It's a very energetic audience, I have to say, out there in Screenland, and they've sent in a number of questions, and some themes have emerged. One is really COVID-19 has meant that a whole different sets of ways of doing things have had to be engineered. And do you see the way that there are lessons to be learned from the changes in the way that we've communicated and used technology, and that might affect the standard setting process? And in the same light, or at least linked, there's a number of questions about whether the emphasis on the sustainability agenda and the way in which the interest in environmental, social, governance issues that are coming to the fore from both the investing community and more broadly, whether those issues are likely to affect the standard setting issues going forward and your forward plans. So it's really about, as you were saying, Sagar, about looking forward and thinking about the externalities. So perhaps I might just ask you both to make a few points about that, or some thoughts that those ideas bring to your mind. Tom?
I was hoping Sagar would go first, and then I could just say whatever he said. But I guess that's not in the works today. But it's all seriousness. I alluded to this in my remarks that I don't think the core principles of audit assurance change. I think we feel pretty comfortable that COVID-19 only draws more attention to them and requires a greater focus than ever on professional skepticism and professional judgment. And the tools may change. And in fact, I really, the crisis has been impacted us in terrible ways. But one positive consequence is it's an opportunity for the profession to show the value that it creates to apply its professional skills, to apply its judgment in such a ways that people will have confidence. If the conclusions of audits are the same as last year, the same risk, I just don't think that's necessarily sustainable on a global basis. This year is different than last year, and it's time, I think, and I have full confidence that the profession can and will step up to the task. I'm not saying it's easy, and this is why we at the IAASB have been trying to do things to help out in terms of the guidance and coordination with national standard setters. And there may be things that we need to do more. For example, we've understood that our standard on interim reports may be slightly outdated. So we've been stress tested, and we need to probably work on that. In terms of sustainability, this is an issue that probably will not go away. What I would say is I piggyback on some work the IAASB did related to the current financial reporting framework, that there's impacts that exist today around materiality, and that we are in the process of putting a staff alert out that connects the audit standards to that and the assurance standards to that. We are also in the process of deliberating on our extended external reporting consultation document. So that will be an initial contribution. But we're at early stages on the issue of sustainability. I think there's a lot of different frameworks out there that are being discussed. I'm glad that there's some desire to bring them all together. And we intend to be an active observer and participant in the process.
Thank you. And Sagar, do you have any comments on these issues?
Yeah, on the first look, COVID has been extremely challenging, but I think it's shown kind of the strength of financial reporting, auditing, the importance of that, and so and I think organizations are going to be stronger. It's taken some pain because I think whether it's, oh wow, look at all the things I could do remotely, that I didn't know I could do all these things. And then now when we get back into a normalized point of view, if you've got, tool set A, which was everybody go to the office every day, and now tool set B, where you can do things remote. Well, if you combine that or whatever mix every organization has, you just become a lot stronger, right? And like my organization, the SEC, culturally, we came into the office a lot, right? And so now we're still, most are working remotely. And I think we've been able to prove, wow, look at all the things we can do. And so when you combine it, you got to make your own judgment for your organization. I think you can actually do more, right? So I think it's a blessing in disguise. But what I do think has been really critical, and we've said this in many statements, is, and our chairman has said, investors thirst for high quality information, and they thirst for it most in this environment. And as people have filed, as people have gotten those reports, you could feel the calmness in the markets, which is an incredible display of the relevancy of what we all do. And it's a humble reminder. People wanted that information so badly, and it was a calming piece of information. And as companies, auditors, et cetera, got through their work or continue to get through their work, you could see the critical importance. And so, given all the things that happen in our profession, it's not often that you need reminders, but it was a nice reminder of that. And so I think they'll continue to be a big springboard from that. In terms of sustainability, it's such a complex issue that would take a long, long time. I think the SEC, we've been clear. Our chairman has given statements. Our Corp Fin director has given statements. There's public speeches on our views. So obviously, our perspectives are well known. The thing I would warn is we cannot lose focus of what I just talked about, all the relevancy and all the critical things that are happening today in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I don't think we should take for granted the challenge, the difficulties, but the value that investors got from what I just talked about, and COVID just showed it to us, right? So I think maintaining that critical focus on that, which is a very, very, very significant thing, it would be kind of what we've certainly advised. So certainly from our focus as are part of the ecosystem. We'll continue to emphasize, look, we got these reforms, we got to focus on these reforms, we got to focus on standard setting. Tom outlined all the different things the IAASB are doing, which are really, really substantive and critical areas, and kind of continue that focus area. So those would be the additional things I'd add on.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I think summing up all of the thinking that we've been doing, it's now time for us to wrap this panel up. So I'd like to thank the speakers very much. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Sagar. Thank you, Stavros, and to Anna. And I think it's been a great discussion, and thank you very, very much. It's been a great way of celebrating 15 years of the PIOB. So heartily thank you for joining us, and to the audience who asked the very interesting questions. Thank you, everyone. Bye.